Hey, what's up, y'all? Peter Burns and Christopher Doring. CD, are you ready? It's time for another episode of Regions Extra SEC Stories. This time we're doing what rivalry?
The Iron Bowl. And the Iron Bowl's up there, I think, according to some in and around this one, with the Yankees and the Red Sox and the Lakers and the Celtics. I mean, it's an all-timer for sure.
The stories are incredible. Kick six to people poisoning trees. It's had a little bit of everything in this rivalry, including some great players and some great coaches. We got an opportunity to talk to some of the best coming up. And this one right now, we start with Jason Campbell, former Auburn quarterback. And just wait until you hear the story about Nick Saban. That's all I'm going to say. Enjoy.
When it comes down to Auburn, even if you go to UAB or you go to Alabama A&M or Alabama State, you still have to choose out of the two bigger schools which one you're pulling for an Iron Bowl day.
And there's not a lot of people that had a lot of success against the Tide, but you were one of those guys. I mean, y'all had it rolling right now. What's your favorite game that you played in?
In the Iron Bowl, I would probably say probably 2002.
Okay.
I know a lot of people probably expect me to say the undefeated season, but I would say 2002 because going into that ball game, there was no Cadillac, there was no Ronnie. And Alabama it was ranked top 10, and they had the number one defense in the nation at the time, and no one gave us a chance to go in that ball game, right? We were just coming off a heartbreak against Georgia where Michael Johnson caught the ball in the back of the end zone on 4th and 15, and, we were still feeling the realms of that. But all of a sudden, Monday hit. Coach said, forget whatever happened in the Georgia game. It's the Iron Bowl, and that's all we're going to talk about moving forward. And, man, I remember going to that ball game. Trey Smith, the little running back, came up from he's from Florida. We ended up signing him at Auburn, probably 5'8", 180 pounds with bricks in his pants.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I remember, I think it was the first or second play of the game. We handed to him. We go for like 30, 40 yards, and we ended up winning that game down there 17 to, I can't even remember what the rest of it was. We ended up winning that game 17-7, yeah. And to me, that was my favorite Iron Bowl because no one picked us in state, out of state. They felt like our backs was against the wall, and that's what the Iron Bowl is all about, man. You got to rise up. It doesn't matter about your records. It doesn't matter about who's the hottest at the time. You're going to get each other's best shot. And it's going to be, like we may be friends 4 years later, but during those 4 years, man, we don't like each other.
Jay, when I grew up, watching this Iron Bowl, it was always at Legion Field, and then it moved home and home. Better to go into Tuscaloosa and knock the Tide off, or better to have it at Jordan-Hare where you got the home fans behind you?
Oh, no, I like to win on the road. I like to go when all the chips are stacked against you. Everybody's rooting against you. You pull up to the Bryant Denton Stadium at the time, and they want to rock your bus. You got people there rocking your bus, and then you get off, you got security and everything, and all you hear is boo. But then you got the Tiger Walk, right? And all of a sudden you see all these Auburn fans. You go through Tiger Walk, but you immediately start feeling that game on Monday. Like it's almost you have to keep your emotions intact for 5 whole days before you can actually get to the game because you don't want to burn out. And that's why I always tell people when it comes to Auburn, it's always something magical happens. When we play them in Alabama, you got to really beat them in Alabama. Like you got to beat them. But in Auburn, it's always something weird happens, especially over the last 15 years, not so much the last couple of years, but the last 15 years. When Auburn's played them at home, it's been some magical plays, but always a tough game, though.
Take us through the pass. What was it, 03? The big one you hit the bin here late in that game. What was that? What was the play call there? You remember it?
Yeah, being over, I knew I think came on a crossing route. We ended up calling a crosser, and I was stepping up in the pocket and catching Ben. And next thing you know, he goes down the sideline, and he's being led. I believe that was Jarris McIntyre at the time. Leading him. And that was a critical game, right? There was a lot of noise about Tuberville was going to be the coach, and if not, and then Petrino was supposed to be flown on a plane. No, there was a whole saga about everything but the Iron Bowl going on that week, right?
How much did you guys know about that leading into the week? I mean, this is social media is not really there quite necessarily yet in that way. I mean, you reading it on what, message boards or just, just rumor? What was it like?
But back then you had Yahoo Message. If one newspaper writer got a hold to it, it was gonna spread like fire. But we knew about it. We knew about the whole thing. The whole week it was talked about on all the TV shows and everything locally. And I just remember going to that ball game, and we was just like, for the seniors, right? It was just, we wanted to send them out in their last Iron Bowl the right way. And it was a
Mhm.
night game. You don't really get many night Iron Bowl games. It's typically a 3:30 game or
Yeah.
2:30 Central. And that time we got a chance to play them at nighttime. And that made it extra fun. And then you're talking about the time I think Mike Shula was the coach in
Yeah.
'03. And, they had a pretty good season that year, but they were still trying to, I think he was still trying to keep his job as well. So, the Iron Bowl can get you fired and get you hired. And I just remember going that game. We want to send our seniors out the right way, man. And we ended up winning that ball game, I think 28-23. We kind of pulled away from them. Then they fought back at the end. Brody Kroll hit a couple passes in that ball game, but then that kind of got us on our run. The Alabama game in '03 started us on our undefeated run because we didn't lose another game since winning that Iron Bowl in '03.
Hmm.
I know that the Alabama and Auburn fans don't like each other, but I'm curious from the player standpoint. We hated Florida State. I didn't like Danny Cannell. I didn't like Todd Reable. I didn't like any of those guys.
Yeah.
Got to be friends with them afterwards. But were there guys on the Alabama roster that you disliked, like legitimately?
Oh yeah, we didn't like any of them. Like that's why I say for 4 years it was, we didn't like each other. Now, once we got to the Senior Bowl and we got in the pros and become teammates and everything, and you see the character that they have, you see the character we have, and you become buddies and everything, and then all of a sudden, it makes it fun when we play each other in the future, right? So now you actually know some people. But I remember being in Cincinnati, and AJ McCarron comes to the team, and and I just, oh, man, we got this Bama guy over here. Yeah, so then, but his wife was from Auburn,
Yeah.
so she was an Auburn grad. So we ended up having fun with that whole situation. At that time, we ended up meeting each other. Trent Richardson, I got to know Trent as well in the pros. It's a couple. Drake Kirkpatrick, Cornelius Wortham, which played with me at the Mississippi All-Star team. He was on that team in Alabama at the time. But, we just didn't like each other.
Mm.
And you knew it. Like it wasn't like we was having team meetings or we was having greetings in Birmingham where we was gonna meet and have dinner together. It was none of that.
Yeah.
Like it was very post afterwards that we became friends, and but we respect the rivalry. That's what
Mm-hmm.
made the game so fun. Like nowadays you see kids transferring from Auburn, from Bama to Auburn, or Auburn to Bama. Like, what? We don't do that. Like that
Mm.
was unheard of. And I don't know, but that got to come back to the point that I don't care if you leave Auburn or if you leave Bama, you don't come to one or the other. Like you got to go elsewhere, and
Yeah.
that's when it's a real rivalry. And I remember when it came to my recruiting and everything, and my brother was like, "Well, you would not go to Ole Miss." But and I said, "Well, Mississippi State recruited me hard too, and David Cutcliffe was too." But Eli was already there the year before, so I knew I didn't want to go there at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I was just like, I kind of want to create my own identity. And at that point in time, I was actually a silent commit to LSU, and then but
Oh
Auburn,
man. Oh,
yeah, yeah.
this kills me, Jason.
So
Kills
I
me.
was silent commit to LSU at the time, right, with David Kelly, who was my recruiting coordinator at the time. And then I remember as soon as Nick Saban got the job, the next day he drove up to the house and he was sitting in the house with him and Jimbo Fisher, and they was trying to convince me to, to continue to come to LSU. And Jared Denardo had just gotten let go. And I was
Yeah.
just like, well, Coach Saban, I don't really know much about you. I was just like, I know you was at Michigan State, but I don't have enough to know about you. And I've been knowing Auburn staff a lot longer and everything. But then after I prayed about it and slept on it and everything for a couple of weeks, I ended up going to Auburn. But I remember hearing the Auburn Iron Bowl with Auburn, Alabama on the radio riding with my dad, who was coming from somewhere. And we were listening to it on the radio. And it sounds so intense on the radio listening to it. I was just like, I told my dad, I said, I want to play in that game one day. I
Wow.
said, I want to play in that game. I want to be a starting quarterback in that game. And I remember ending up choosing Auburn a couple weeks later.
That's amazing. I mean, I mean, you have those moments, right? That just it's clear as day. You wanted to cut your own,
Mhm.
your path, and you end up doing it, which is a kudos to you. Although the fact that you turned down Nick Saban, not knowing who he is, and Jimbo Fisher was OC at the time. Have you ever ran into Coach Saban and talked about that at any point? Like, you've seen him over the years, and he gave you some hell about it.
Well, the thing is, I had to play against for 4 years in Auburn. He was at LSU. So fortunately, we went 2-2. We won
Yeah.
both home games, lost both away games. So our record was 2-2. But he ended up coming back on pro day, and he was working all us out for the draft after '04, and he ended up drafting Ronnie Brown at number 2
Yeah.
and everything. So he came back and got another Tiger. He got Ronnie Brown. But I do tell myself that sometimes, like, dang, I turned down Nick Saban. Like, you know.
I would have liked to have heard that conversation. It's like,
Uh,
Coach Saban, I don't know much about you. I don't think it's going to work out for you coming
Yeah.
down from the north and the coach in the SEC. It's probably not a good
yeah.
idea, you know?
But even at that time, he was very demanding.
Yeah.
Like my mom had cooked a good home cooked meal for him, and him and Jimbo sitting there, and I had heard about Jimbo and liked his offenses and everything. And I was just like, because he had coached Damian Craig at Auburn,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and I was just like, man, I just don't really know much about Coach Saban. And at that point in time, you know, I'm from Mississippi, I'm from the South, and and how he was talking, I was like, I really don't know, but but it ended up being the greatest coach of all times in college, right? So you sort of like, wow, like I actually turned down the greatest coach of all times, but it worked out well. It worked
Yep.
out well. We had some good competitors, but as I look back on it, man, when I played against him and that coaching staff, he had Will Muschamp on that staff. Like, I mean,
Derek
he had another,
Dooley,
Kirby
I think Kirby
Kirby was on
Smart
there?
was on that
yeah,
staff.
Kirby was on. I was just like, dude, like we played against some dudes for
Mhm.
4 years when they was at LSU. And
Yeah.
because they had won a national championship, I think it was '03, and then we ended up going undefeated in '04. So I just like, man, it's some really great coaches out there. You just never know like how they start pulling off, and this coach becomes a head coach here and there, and just imagine like on that staff they had about 7 head coaches, didn't even know it at the time.
Unreal.
Well, you're an Auburn man. Auburn man as a player. Auburn man representing the school when you were in the NFL, and now working on the radio call.
Mhm.
I guess doing it for the home network, you can let your feelings come out a little bit more. You don't have to be quite as objective. But what is it
Yeah.
like for you to call an Auburn game against Alabama in that Iron Bowl?
Man, you gotta release, you gotta control your emotions, right? And you gotta still call the game in a way for like, cause I always gotta think this way, Peter and Chris, is someone's not don't have a TV watching the game. So
Mm.
someone is like they're out hunting and they got the game on, or or they're somewhere and they're not in front of a TV, and you got to try to paint the picture of what's happening on the football field while they're listening. But not only that, you also got to have intensity behind it that make them feel like they're on the edge of their seats and they're at the ball game. So I take great honor in calling games and trying to paint the picture that maybe they don't see it. Like as a player, as a quarterback, how you see certain things, defensively, offense, what's the situation, like what are things you think they should be looking at if in those moments. So you always try to relay those messages so that people are understanding the game as if they didn't know it, they would learn more from it from hearing you on the radio. I remember the worst Iron Bowl to call, not per se,
Yeah.
but it was 4th and 31, and
Yep.
you're sitting there and you're saying, just don't rush 2 or rush 3.
Mm-hmm.
You got to rush more than that because you don't want to give Jalen Milroe time to stand back there and give the guy, because he's going to look outside, right? That's where your best chance to throw the ball up, because in the middle, everybody's in there. And I just remember, we ran 2, and I was like, oh, God, it's too much time. This is too much time. And you hear Andy over there, Milroe's holding it. He pats it. He's looking. And he's looking. All of a sudden, he throws it. And then, here comes Isaiah Bond making the catch towards the outside, and you're just like, and you can hear a pin drop to the point that Andy didn't even want to say anything. Andy's just sitting there, and I'm looking at him like, are you going to say something? he,
Done.
he didn't say that. So then I had to just take over and just explain the entire play of what just happened. And I remember my friend hit me after the game and said, man, you did a good job explaining that, because it sounded like nobody wanted to say anything. But you talk about the close ones, man, that's almost there to winning. Those are the hardest ones, right? Because you can't be critical, even though if you see something, you're like, we should have done this.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you have to be respectful to say, hey, man, things happen so fast on the field. You always have to remember that as well. But, you talk about plays in the Iron Bowl. I remember I was in Cleveland 2013.
Mm-hmm.
The kick
Kick
six, they
six.
call it,
Yeah.
right?
That's one of those
And
plays, Jason, that everybody knows where they were at. If you were just a college football fan, you absolutely remember where you were at. Where
yeah.
were you at for kick six?
So kick six, I'm in Cleveland. It's the night before we're getting ready to play. We're getting ready to play a game, and all of a sudden, the Iron Bowl's on, and we're in meetings, and I'm in there with Norv Turner. We're going over some plays and everything for the next day, and all of a sudden we get a big knock on the door. Boom! And they're like, "JC, you got to come here." And Norv like, "Hold on, what the heck's going on? Like, we're meeting." He was like, "No, coach, you got to come here too." So I get out there, and all of a sudden, by this time, Nick, Chris Davidson ran the ball almost back. He's probably like the 15-yard line by the time I caught it, right? So I run out there and I see it, and all of a sudden I see the fans and everybody going crazy. And then they showed the replay of what happened. So Nick Saban actually put the 1 second back on because he was arguing about it.
Yeah, I remember
Because
that.
he was arguing about it, they put the 1 second back on, and it ended up working against him. And that's changed college football forever because everyone puts a speedster now,
Yeah.
even on the field goal team when it's a long field goal, just in case something like that happens. But I remember exactly where I was at and exactly what we was doing. And that was crazy because just a week before they had the magical run with Georgia where the ball bounced up
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I got caught and ran in for a touchdown.
Right.
So
Right on
those
Jordan
moments
Hare.
you never forget what happens, and even the Cam comeback, they call it. You
Yeah.
don't forget that one as well. So the Iron Bowl, it creates great memories, and people tell me about our Iron Bowl, and I'll be like, "Oh, you remember a little bit more than I do."
So in closing here, Jason, because we can go hours here on this thing, man. It's been awesome. Say something nice about Alabama.
Oh man, say something nice about Alabama. Gosh, I give them credit. I give them credit. Over the last decade, they have probably been the team to beat. I give them credit. Over the last decade, they've set the standard for elite championship caliber football.
They're just trying to get payback on whatever the times that you beat them 3 out of 4. He is Jason Campbell. He's one of the legends of this great rivalry. It is the Iron Bowl, and can't wait to hear you on the call again this year. All right, man?
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
I'll never forget that story of Jason Campbell having Nick Saban in his living room and going, I just don't know who you are, Coach. That's amazing.
Something about the radar just didn't sit well with Jason. But
I don't know if you're going to make it in this
one.
game of college football. And I think Coach did okay. Speaking of coaches that did okay, that is Coach Gene Chizik. He's grown to be one of our favorites, not as just a coworker, but as a friend, CD. And the stories he has about the Iron Bowl are epic. Check it out. Chiz, when I say Iron Bowl, what's the first memory that comes to mind?
Chaos, guys, chaos. So I want you to picture this. It's 2002. I'm the defensive coordinator at Auburn, and we just came off a last-second loss to Georgia, right? But the problem is we had 2 first-round running backs in Ronnie Brown and Cadillac Williams. They're both out for the game. We have no running backs. We bring in a true freshman running back. So essentially, we're about 10.5-point underdogs. We have no shot, right? We're playing in Tuscaloosa. We went out there with a true freshman tailback named Trey Smith and literally beat Alabama there 17-7. We played great on defense that day. I don't think they scored till like the middle of the third quarter, but we walked out of there with a victory. But those are the stories. That's the passion for the game, guys. There's nothing else in the state that even comes close to it. There's no pro sports. So that's everybody's Super Bowl.
Chiz, that was one of the 7 times that you were a part of the Iron Bowl. I'm curious as to the experience as a defensive coordinator, how that helped you prepare once you got the head coaching job for a game that's as unique as this one. Did you do anything different in the prep week or approach your team in a different way?
Well, it wasn't about that week, CD, because that's a great point. What I did when I became the head coach is I prepared them every week for what was coming down the line. Like, this isn't a 1 week we talk about Alabama. When you become the head coach at Auburn or when you become the head coach at Alabama, there's discussion 365 about the other team. Like, you don't just show up on game week and say, all right, guys, now we have Alabama. Iron Bowl in preparation for Iron Bowl it's daily. So what I did when I became the head coach is I made them understand the importance of the game, because when I became the head coach the year before in 2008, they had gotten beat 36-0. And then I came in and we didn't have even near the same roster. In 2009, they came to Auburn, and you guys will love this story. We were undermanned. I mean, they had they had 2 first-rounders in the backfield. They had Ingram and Trent Richardson. Greg McElroy was a quarterback, as we all love him. But they came in ranked number 2 in the country. We had no shot at the game, right? We weren't as talented. But I told them this. I said, hey, guys, here's what we're going to do. We're going to score first. And then right when we score, we're going to do a surprise onside kick. We're going to get it and go down and score again. Sure enough, we went up 14-0. It happened just like that. We go up 14-0. Unfortunately, we were literally getting ready to spoil the national championship run, but McElroy takes them on a long drive late. They score in the 4th quarter with like 1:20 left. I'll never forget, they hit Roy Upchurch in the flat on a little play action pass there, and we end up losing 26-21. But those are the kind of things, CD, to answer your question, that was a prep for 365 days for that game.
Then you flip it on the other side, Chiz, and the following year, you guys are down 24-0 at halftime. What in the world did you say?
Yeah, it was incredible. Actually, we were down 24-0 PB, and the turning point in the game is we were down 24-0. McElroy drops back to pass, and he hits a check down to Ingram, and this dude is going to hit his head on the goalpost. He is going straight down the sideline. He's going to hit his head on the goalpost. It's going to be 31-0. But we have a defensive end that tracks Mark Ingram down on the sideline, and he punches the ball out. It rolls through the end zone, so they don't score. We turn around and score, make it 24-7. That was the first part of that game. Then the second part of the game was, it's right before the half. We're down 24-7. They're getting ready to go in and score. There's a minute left in the half. Nick Fairley breaks through and gets a strip sack fumble, recovers it himself, or we're down 31-7. But we go into halftime. It's 24-7. We had a bunch of older seniors. I said, guys, we're going to get the ball in the first series. We're going to go down and score, and it is game on. And that is exactly what happened. We went down. We made it 24-14, and, man, everybody was just focused and locked in, and then we were able to come back 28-27 and win the game. And so we've had definitely some great moments. I'm 4-3, CD, to your 7. I'm 4-3, but I've also had some pretty gruesome losses in that game too. But it's an incredible game to be a part of.
Chiz, you've seen it both as a defensive coordinator and a head coach studying film. What was the one player when you looked at film of Alabama getting ready for that week going, oh, my God, like, what are we going to do here? Was there one player that just really kind of just stuck in your craw?
I mean, PB, go down the list. You want your eyes cut out, or your eyes poked out, or your nose cut off. You have Julio Jones out there at wideout. You got Mark Ingram and Trent Richardson at tailback. Every year they had another, quarterback and skill people. And look, let's not even start to mention the defensive players they had. Their front 7 every year, they were all drafted within four rounds. They just had great players everywhere. They were disciplined. But when you look at their teams, one of the messages that we had to really just drill in our guys is the physicality of the game. His teams were going to be physical. It was going to be a war. When you wake up on Sunday morning, get ready to feel like you can't walk, because if you're in those trenches every day, it is literally just a battle. That's how they practiced. That's how they delivered on game day. So if you're going to go in there, you got to match the physicality. You got to match the mentality, because Alabama would physically try to take your will and beat you down. That's how they did it back in the day with Nick. You could never look at one of Nick's teams and say they can't run the football. They were going to pound you with 230-pound, 240-pound. They were going to pound you with their tailback games. Their offensive line was huge. And then they had the skill guys like Julio Jones, who tore us up in the 2010 game early. before we kind of got that under control. So there was just players everywhere. But the mentality and the physicality of those teams was outrageous.
Chiz, you mentioned Julio Jones and some of the other players that ended up in Tuscaloosa. I'm sure a lot of those guys you were in the mix for when you were trying to recruit them coming out of high school. What's the best recruiting story of head-to-head Auburn, Alabama on the recruiting trail?
My biggest thing, CD, is, there was two things. One, I wanted to make sure that whoever we had committed to us, they couldn't flip him. And conversely, if they had somebody committed to them, I wanted to flip them. So, Oh man, I can go through the TJ Yeldon flip, the Reuben Foster flip. So we had TJ Yeldon. He was committed to us for a year. Alabama flipped him late. So I said, okay, I got you. So the next year, I think it was the very next year, they had Reuben Foster committed. Well, I flipped him late. So you have those back and forth stories about, and let me tell you, it back in the day, especially in the state with what Nick had going on, it was hard to flip an Alabama player over to Auburn. Like you don't do that, right? But that was kind of like a little feather in your cap, kind of badge of honor, if you will, if you could flip a guy. So they got TJ Yeldon for me. I got Reuben Foster for them. Never got to coach Reuben because I got let go after that. But the bottom line is the recruiting stories were back and forth. What I was proud of is that when I got there as the head coach, if there were 12 guys in the state that Alabama, that could play in this league, Alabama was probably going to get 11 of them. And I felt like by the time I left that we had balanced that out pretty good.
Would you ever be on a recruiting trip with some of these guys, and then Bama would be in the parking lot or like in the down the street waiting for you to finish, or vice versa? Did you guys would ever like physically cross paths with each other on the recruiting trail?
The assistants would a good bit, but let me tell you guys this story because this is fact. When you recruit the state of Alabama, you have to know before you go into that school if the high school coach is Alabama or Auburn. You got to know that. Like, I'm not sure that happens in any other state. There were times when head coaches really didn't want us even in there. And I'm sure it was probably vice versa. But 100%, I told every assistant, before you go into any high school in the state of Alabama, you need to know whether that coach was Alabama or Auburn. Because if I'm going to throw a percentage on it, 85% of them were Alabama or Auburn. And then there might have been a 15% who were really open either way. They didn't care. But you better know, because I'm going to tell you something. If that head coach had an allegiance to the other school, the chances of you getting that dude were pretty slim. So we ended up coming up with this idea that we were going to get limousines, put all the coaches in limousines. We were going to announce in advance that we were going to the school. It became a real popular deal. So when we were announcing that we would be going to the schools, it became so incredible. Helicopters would be flying over the schools, knowing where we're going. And you would see the students come out, like hundreds of them. But if it was an Alabama coach or Alabama principal, sometimes they would go, sorry, guys, we can't have that kind of disruption. If it was an Auburn coach or an Auburn principal, come on, guys, let's go. And they would meet us out there, and the students would be going crazy. But we had to get creative on the recruiting trail on how we could try to appeal to these guys in the recruiting phase of everything. So, again, back to it mattered who the principal and who the head coach was, and you better know that going in.
Chiz showing up in a limo. I love every part about that. Chiz, obviously one of the greatest plays in college football history is kick six. Everybody kind of has that moment of, hey, where were you at that moment? So walk us through it. When you saw what happened, where were you at and what was that like?
Well, first of all, Chris Davis is the one who actually returned it. And I recruited Chris out of Birmingham, and he was a great kid. I was so happy to see that. I thought that was an amazing call by Gus. I was actually getting ready to take my son to a Kansas City Chiefs game. I was in Kansas City, and we were getting ready. What's that?
I was in Kansas City before that game. I was in the hotel lobby getting ready. It was going to be the Broncos versus the Chiefs in that game.
I was in the hotel lobby, PB.
Oh my God, this is crazy.
I was in
Man,
the hotel lobby when the lobby erupted.
yes.
They erupted. I was in that lobby because the next day, a buddy of mine gave me field passes for the Chiefs Broncos game. So I said, you know what? I'm going to take my boy to the game. That's where I'll never forget it. It erupted, and I ran over to the TVs and I looked at it and I went, that did not just happen. That did not just happen. So I was so happy for Chris Davis. I was so happy just to see another Iron Bowl just end on a crazy note. But that's where I was. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That game ending in that way would have been awesome at any end of game situation, but having it be in the Iron Bowl made it even more special. So I asked you this question: you held up the crystal football in the end of the national championship season. Along the way, you beat Alabama to remain on that track. What was the contrast in feelings between how you felt after that game against Alabama versus the national championship? Similar feelings?
To be quite honest, yes, CD. To be quite honest, yes. And probably it has maybe more so to do with how we won at Alabama. I mean, you can go back 100 years, and I haven't done this, but I'm not sure anybody's ever been in Tuscaloosa down 24-0 and was able to come back and win. So, it was Cam, it was Nick Fairley, it was so many other great players around him. But just to see what that locker room was like after doing that, I'm not sure that will ever be done again. It was more probably about the way we came back and beat them. Yeah, huge implication and the significance of the win. If we would have lost that game, we would have been out of the national championship run. We still would have been in the SEC championship. We'd have played South Carolina, but we would not have had a chance to play Oregon in the national championship. So the feeling of it being Alabama in the Iron Bowl, on the road, down by 24, and that kind of propelled us to be able to play for the national championship because we felt confident we could beat South Carolina again because we played them earlier. I think all those things would have to make that win probably close to the feeling of beating Oregon if you had to compare them.
Be honest with me real quick, Chiz. A lot of times coaches say the things that they feel like their team needs to hear, but they don't necessarily believe it. At what point in that comeback did you think it was plausible that you guys could actually win the game?
When we came out at halftime and we scored immediately, and I became a prophet. Okay, I became a prophet because I told him in the locker room, we're going to go out. We got the ball first. We're going to score and game on. And I kind of looked around and I was like, oh, that just happened. Game on. And the guys felt that way too. You could see it. And I'm going to tell you something. There was no panic in the locker room. Man, Cam got up there. Red Dude's a right act. We couldn't have played worse in the first half, CD. And what I realized was that as bad as we played, if we can go out and get some momentum early, we only had 30 minutes. If we could go out and get some momentum earlier, I felt like we had made the adjustments to change the game. And we did. They kicked another field goal in the second half. That was all they did. And then offensively, we were able to move the ball and hit some big plays. But that was when they scored. I'm not going to give you the coach speak. I knew all along, when it was 24-0, I'm sitting there going, geez, I don't know how we're going to get out of this hole. I was looking for our team chaplain. Like, hey, Chet, where are you, buddy? Let's do some prayers down here. But when we scored, that's true. When it's 24-0, I'm looking for him. Like, all right, dude, where you at? But when it became 24-14, I truly said, we're going to take this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and ultimately you did, and the rest ends up being history. All right, so as we end off this thing, Chiz, and your thoughts on it, say something nice about that rival. What can you say nice about Alabama football?
I've never seen in all of my coaching, this is my experience, I've never seen a higher level of respect for players with players. Now go back and look at this game now. You see all these guys have these brawls at midfield before the game, CD. We've seen it with Florida State. You've seen it in the Egg Bowl. When Nick Saban was there and I was there, and in all of my experiences, there was none of that going on. Go back and think about it. Go back and look at.
Yeah.
You didn't see all the bench clearing, all the crap talking before the game. These dudes have an incredible amount of respect for each other as players. Now, fans, completely the opposite. Like the fans could learn something because it is completely the opposite. I mean, there's brawls in the parking lot. There's a lot of stuff going on. But on the field, between the white lines, between the players and the coaches, and the fans could learn something by this, there was an enormous amount of respect for each other. You never saw any of that yah-yah pregame, none of that. Part of that was because Nick didn't let it happen, and neither did we. But I just feel like no matter what the situation was with the players, most of them being in-state guys or Georgia guys, there was always an incredible amount of respect for the players between the white lines, and I will say that unequivocally for as heated as that rivalry is.
Chiz, always great with the stories, man. He could have gone for about an hour. All right, we've heard from the Auburn side of the Iron Bowl. Now it's time to talk about the Alabama side of it. One of our favorites as well, quarterback for the Crimson Tide, a national champion, Greg McElroy. G-Mac, when I say Iron Bowl, what comes to mind?
Hostility, I mean, there's a million things that you could say, but hostility is probably the top one. What's funny is like as a kid that was an outsider, I was from Texas. I never really thought about the Iron Bowl like that. I mean, to me, Alabama, LSU, Alabama, Tennessee, Alabama, Auburn, they all kind of felt similar. But when I moved here, I realized just how different it was and how crazy it was. But it's one of a kind, man. I mean, the in-state rivalries are unique, as y'all know. But one in which there's that much vitriol and hatred it kind of takes it up a notch for sure.
To this day, is it more of the 2009, you bring back the Tide to that and win that game at Jordan-Hare that sticks with you? Or is it more of the comeback in 2010 on the flip side of it? Like what memory comes to mind first, 09 or 10?
Well, for me, 10. You don't remember your successes as a player. You remember your failures. And honestly, like the success for Auburn, relatively speaking, has been kind of few and far between. And that's a game that like forever lives in infamy for Alabama fans, and for Auburn fans, it's probably their favorite game of all time, or at least one of them. Between that one and maybe a handful of others in recent history, but it's been a one-sided rivalry for a while now. So that one I think comes up more in my life, way more in my life than the one that we actually won the game down there. That was just a minor footnote in what was a remarkably fun and exciting season. But as far as like the ones that people want to talk about, they want to talk about the comeback way more than 09. I can't really blame them either. Like the comeback was a highly built up. We're the defending champ. They're on the verge of maybe winning a championship themselves. Heisman Trophy winner on one side, Heisman Trophy hopeful on another. Like I can understand why 2010 was probably, a crazier game, maybe a more memorable game for a lot of folks.
I mean, it's what was it? 24-0. Not to poke it, but it's like 24-0 at halftime. You guys are cruising. Like walk us through that game a little bit.
Mark Ingram's running down the right sideline. He had lost one fumble in his career. The fumble that he had lost prior to that was actually in 2009 against Tennessee, which led to Rocky Block. So when Mark lost a fumble, bad things happened. Like games that shouldn't be close became close for whatever reason. It was like weird voodoo. So that was like odd. And not only did he lose a fumble, but it bounced end over end 30 yards out of the back of the end zone. I mean, the odds of that happening are infinitesimal. Just right down the end of the sideline. If it could have just bounced just one slight breeze of wind and it's out of bounds. So that's one. Julio got caught from behind, which never happens. But knowing Jones, he was like, "Oh, I got tight. My back got tight." It was some strange excuse. But he got caught from behind on one that was uncharacteristic down the right sideline on a side adjust that he returned back out because it wasn't actually a side adjust needed. I was able to move and hit him on it's kind of like a slant return. And he was out the gate, and that's usually one where he definitely scores. We had Trent Richardson in the end zone, on a little flat pass. I hit him right in the chest. He dropped it. Trent never dropped it. He was great, really sure hands. On the next play, we have a play protection called Rip. Our right guard is starting, I think, maybe his first or second game. He hears Liz. He slides the wrong way. Nick Fairley's unblocked. I fumble. And, what are the odds? Touchdown down the left sideline. Mark Barron's got a torn pec. He can't lift one of his arms. He can only lift one arm, can't lift the other. And he would have intercepted it if he had both hands. And then at the end, we're driving. And DJ Fluker can't get out to a nickel. He goes around him, grabs me by the shoulder, ends up throwing me down. I get knocked out. I fully believe, I'm still in the game. We win the game. We did it the year before. Probably would have done it again. Yeah. But it's just like 100 different things that had to happen in that game for it to end up the way it did. And you remember all of them. It hurts. It still hurts. It took me 10 years to get over it, probably. But now it's water under the bridge. It is what it is.
It is funny, man. As you're talking about that, I'm thinking back to our choke and doke. We were up 31-3 with 12 minutes left in the game, and somehow allowed them to score 28 points in the final 12 minutes. And those games stand out way worse. And it's not just a defensive failure; it's an offensive failure. It's a complete, team collapse there to let a lead get away like that. But ironically, you guys won down in Jordan-Hare the year before. Alabama hasn't necessarily had a ton. I guess they've had success, but I hear this idea that weird things. You mentioned voodoo before, like there's some sort of voodoo thing going on at Jordan-Hare. What is it like playing there as Alabama in front of that crowd, particularly at night?
It's hostile. When you're Alabama and you're going into an opposing venue at night or at 2:30, whatever time it is, it's always hostile. So I never felt like Auburn was more intense than, say, Mississippi State for us. No, I'm sure for other opponents, I feel like we got every fan base's best shot. That was kind of just the way it was. And we were the top dog, number one team in the country. Going to South Carolina was just as tough as going to LSU, or going to Arkansas was just as tough as going to Florida, and going to Georgia was just as tough as going to Auburn. They were all hard, and it was awesome. It was super fun to know that you're going to get an opponent's fan base best shot. But it was tough. The only thing that was weird about Auburn is that there was always some funny business that would happen, en route to the stadium. And I always tell this story, in 2009, we're staying in Montgomery. That's where we stayed. It wasn't really uncommon. I think a lot of the teams stayed in Montgomery, and we always had a police escort on our buses. It was, that was
normal. Yeah,
of course. That's standard. Well, the police escort got caught in traffic. So we couldn't negotiate the traffic en route to the stadium from the hotel. So we were on the bus for probably 90 minutes when it should take 45. Now all of a sudden we get to the stadium and we're 45 minutes behind when we're supposed to get there. So now everyone's routine and rhythm is thrown off.
I'm sure Coach Saban was normal about it, right?
He lost his mind. There was definitely insider trading going on there. I don't, is it conspiratorial? Yes, but come on. Where else can you have a police escort that gets stuck in traffic? And there's no exit. There's nowhere to go. So it was, there was something up there, but it just threw off the rhythm of the game. Guys were having to get taped, during the pregame speech. It was just, everything was discombobulated. And I think when kickers are supposed to go out, they were 10 minutes late, and then, which made us as 10 minutes late as an offense, or we had a condensed warm up. It was just, everything felt a little off. Now it took us a little while. We started slow in that game, but we eventually got it going. But that definitely had an impact, I think, there on how we played in the first quarter and just feeling comfortable.
How was Coach Saban that week leading to an Iron Bowl? Was he different? What was his? Because we've heard from all of these coaches in these rivalries about how they approach the game. How was Coach?
He was the exact same during Iron Bowl week as he would be any other week.
Okay, yeah.
And some guys treat it differently. Some guys talk about it, some guys embrace it like he didn't care. He treated Tennessee Chat the same way he did Auburn. And he treated Auburn the same way he did Virginia Tech. and he treated Virginia Tech the same way he treated Mississippi State. I mean, it was just next man up mentality. So he didn't really lean into it. I think that's why he was probably so consistent in his performance over the course of 17 years. Whereas with some coaches, they circle games, and you can tell the coaches that do this. They circle games and they ramp up, and the team plays amazing in that game, and then they lose the following week to a terrible team. I mean, it's pretty obvious the coaches that do it, and there's still several that do it because they know the games they need to win for job security. Yeah. So it's not uncommon, but that's why Coach was so good for so long, I think, because no game was more important than the other. He didn't treat it as such.
G-Mac, we've talked to a couple of guys that have grown up in the state of Alabama, friends with guys that played at Auburn from high school or friends with them from recruiting trips. What was your relationship like with the players on the other side in that rivalry? Were you friendly, or did you have great disdain for the guys themselves?
No, we were pretty friendly. I mean, I think the vitriol is really more from the fans, and I'm sure there were guys we didn't like. I mean, there were definitely a few guys that would cheap shot or would do something dirty. Like I remember in 2009. It was actually the second touchdown, little over route to our tight end, Colin Peak. They brought the free safety, and you can go back and see it. Like it is targeting to the highest degree. I mean, the free safety blitz, late trigger, I see it. I hit the little like a 3x1 all go. I hit the tight end who's number 3 on the over, throw it, and he turns up the sideline, scores. But, I mean, I'm talking late hit, like you wouldn't believe, like full Superman targeting right into my face. So, like, yeah, I don't like him. I don't even remember his name. But I don't like him. And there were a few that we didn't like, but, like, we all played in the Senior Bowl. And, you got to know some of those guys, and they're like, these guys are great. And then even throughout our careers, I was in FCA. And a lot of those guys, we would have a big FCA retreat for all the colleges in the state. So Auburn would have a huge contingent. We'd have a big contingent, all sports. But a lot of football guys were there, and a lot of football guys for us were there as well. So those guys would go. We'd have Montevallo, UAB, UAH, Samford, like a ton of schools. So you got to kind of know everybody, and we were very friendly in that setting. And we compete against each other. Like we do a tug of war at FCA camp, and like we wanted to win, but it was pretty friendly for the most part. But yeah, there were a few guys that were, they didn't like us because they didn't get an offer or whatever the reason may be. And they tried to exercise a grudge. So, yeah, against Auburn and against some of your rivals, it's not uncommon to get a few more cheap shots and have a few guys that would probably go out of their way to do something unnecessary.
Yeah. CD and I do that all the time to each other just on the show. So I guess
it's not uncommon. Like people are like, oh, it's so bad. But like I had a little extra juice on a rivalry game. Like I'm not mad at anybody for having a little extra juice in a game like that.
CD, so interesting to hear from G-Mac because so many of these rivalry stories that we've been doing with regions have all been like, I grew up in this rivalry. G-Mac really wasn't that guy, and yet the amount of respect he has for that rivalry is really, really interesting.
Yeah, it's funny when guys come in and get indoctrinated to it, and then it becomes part of their soul. The fact that he even moved back into the area, I think, shows just how much the impact of that school had on him, and certainly – having some success in that rivalry gets you a little cachet in the state too.
Yeah, and a man that has that, not only for us over in the SEC network, but anytime he steps down to Tuscaloosa is the great Roman Harper. Of course, such a great career in the NFL, but really cut his teeth down at Alabama. And not necessarily the greatest years, but some darn good stories.
What's it like growing up in that state, around this rivalry, no pro sports in that state? I mean, describe kind of what the dynamic is from being a kid in that state growing up.
Well, I think I grew up a little bit more unique than most because my parents went to Alabama State. So I grew up an HBCU kid. So which right there in Montgomery, I'm from Prattville, 10 minutes down the road. So when we had like fan day or you had got to pick your team day, everybody picks Alabama Auburn. I have them like black and gold, you know what I mean? So I'm wearing Alabama State colors. And everybody's like, what's that? I'm like, well, this is Alabama State. This is where my parents went to. This is like what I grew up rooting for. So those are the Saturdays I spent was watching Alabama State play. And then
And PB, his brother was a Gator fan too.
yeah,
So
he
the
is.
whole family.
Yeah, that's very true. My older brother's a big Gator fan. So we're all sitting there and love CD, of course. And so I'm sitting there and they're like, well, that's fine. You can be an Alabama State fan, but who do you like? You got to pick one, Alabama or Auburn. And I was like, well, I don't know if I want to pick. Like, I got my team. They're like, no, well, you got to pick one. So I never really picked one. I didn't grow up an Alabama or an Auburn fan. I didn't really think about any of that stuff as far as me personally until both of them start recruiting me. Auburn, I had such a really good time when I was there on my recruiting visit. And then as my senior year was rolling, they bring me to games. I remember vividly going to the Auburn-Georgia game that was at Auburn as the first time I'd seen the Eagles soaring through the skies and stuff. That was like dope. So that was a really cool feeling in game. And then I chose Alabama ultimately, but I did have a great time. Ronnie Brown was Carlos Dansby. Carlos Dansby was my host. We went to Tuskegee. He took me all around. He actually borrowed Ronnie Brown's car because Carlos Dansby didn't even have a car. Look at that. Like, guys were like, dude played 15, 16 years in the league, had no car when I was on my visit to Auburn, and how times have really changed. And he had to borrow Ronnie Brown's, like, Honda Civic. So it was like, that was like my recruiting story.
Yeah.
So let me ask you real quick. How long does it take to grow the disdain that's required to actually be in Alabama or an Auburn?
Yeah.
You're saying nice things about these guys. You don't have a dog in the fight, and then all of a sudden you're in it. Like, how long does it take you to develop those emotions?
Well, I think, like, I don't think I developed them really, like, on the field as much as I did, like, once the game was over. They come to Tuscaloosa. They win in Tuscaloosa. They stay in Tuscaloosa. They party in Tuscaloosa after they win. They're trying to take our girls. So, like, at that point, it starts to get a little bit personal. And then you're like, okay, well, we're going to get them back. And then we never really beat them. But I went to Auburn's campus a lot as a student because I had so many friends I went to high school with that were in school at Auburn at the time. So I got to go to Auburn and party some. So I don't really hate Auburn. I think the disdain was built, CD, was when they won a couple of times in Tuscaloosa and they stayed and partied in Tuscaloosa. And hearing about that really ticked me off. I think that's where a little bit more of the hatred came from.
So, Roman, that's interesting that you say that because a lot of people are built into that rivalry about who hates who. But would you say it amped up just simply because of how many years in a row, by like year 3, year 4, you were just sick of it because of what the results were in that, or what?
It's interesting. It's PB. We were favored to win like 3 out of the 4 that I lost. So it wasn't like, man, it just came out of nowhere. It was the fact that, okay, well, Auburn just played better that day. Like the one year, Ronnie Brown, Cadillac Williams were all hurt. And then you had a little running back named Trey Smith come in and have like the game of his life. We had that one game. And like, you just like, how did that happen? Like, how did that happen? They weren't even supposed to be good or in the game. And Alabama, we found a way to play our worst game. And that's why to this day, whenever I look at the Iron Bowl and everybody says, oh, well, Alabama's got this one, like it's all good. It's never all good. That's exactly when it's the most dangerous. And I'm the most nervous is when nobody picks Auburn and everybody thinks Alabama just has a cakewalk to victory.
And the 4 or 5 years that you were around it, was there one play or one before the game, after the game situation that really kind of stands out to you to this day? You're like, all right, that's what the Iron Bowl's about.
So, Auburn made a couple really big plays, but for me personally, my favorite play is that I got my first, was that my first career interception? It was probably one of my earlier career interceptions versus Auburn. I don't know if my first or not, but was my sophomore year against Auburn. I caught a really good play in the back of the end zone off of a tip. And the best part about that is that one of my best friends, he was a cheerleader at Auburn. And so when he saw me get the interception, he started celebrating and jumping around like right over there by me. And so that was probably, he's like, everybody gets mad at him. He's like, nah, man, that's my boy right there. So like we grew up together. So And so that was probably one of my more fond memories. One of the other ones I think that really made me mad, I think it was my junior year, maybe sophomore, junior year, I can't remember. Um, Carnell Williams, he started like kind of high stepping on his way to the end zone. And I like sped up. It was like, so when people look at me and they see that I hit Steve Smith in the end zone in the NFL as a professional, if you
Yeah.
actually go back, I almost did the same thing to Carnell Williams when we played in the Iron Bowl early on, like my sophomore, junior year. Because I remember the next year, whenever I saw Carnell after that, he's like, bro, why were you trying to throw me through the fence? I was like, I just got mad. I like literally caught him in the end zone, grabbed him, and tried to like throw him through the fence, like on the sidelines over there. Luckily, it was kind of far, but he did get kind of close to the fence though, and I was like 2 or 3 yards in the end zone. I didn't care. So, those things to me are like what kind of stick out.
What do you remember the fans being like when you would go down to Jordan Hare? Was it a different level than it was any other of the other games?
I think it's just everybody in the state of Alabama. Like everybody's talking about the
Yeah.
game all week long because you get 364 days to talk trash to your brother, your cousin, your sister, whoever that friend is. I think that's the other big difference, though, PB, is that this Alabama Auburn, it's a lot of family on family type rivalry.
Yeah.
It's not like you just have one family that's just Alabama. It's always a straggler of Auburn somewhere, whether it's a cousin, maybe it's a nephew. Like it's somewhere in there. And it's so many houses divided where you got people that have married off each side. So one's trying to get their son to be this one, the other one's trying to get the other kid to be that one. So it's easy for somebody to always talk trash. It's not like, Alabama's other big rivalry is Tennessee. Like nobody has family members that are Alabama and Tennessee. It's not built like that. But
Yeah.
Alabama Auburn is very, very much so split where you could have a cousin that's he just wanted to be different. Kind of like my brother with Florida, see, right, CD, where he's like, everybody's going one way. He's just like, yeah, I'm gonna go with Florida. So that's what kind of happens a lot of times as far as it comes to the Iron Bowl and the Alabama and Auburn. That's why I thought this Auburn team this year was going to have a lot more success because it started to remind me of the Auburn teams that I saw or played against, where they had a guy named Anthony Mix, who was the top wide receiver coming out of Baldwin County in my year. Then they got Ben Abumanu, who was a 5-star out of Selma, Alabama. They got Courtney Taylor, who Alabama wanted heavily at the time. They had Devin Aramashadu. So they had like 4 or 5 dudes that were like top tier guys. I think it was, I forget, his last name was Cox. He was a left-hand quarterback. That was their dude that they threw it to. And then, of course, they had Ronnie Brown and and Cadillac Williams at running back. So, like, they were loaded. And shout out to Cadillac, who went to Auburn, even though I think Alabama bought him the car. So, shout out.
I mean, it just means more.
Maybe,
sometimes.
maybe. I don't know.
It
Maybe.
means more.
I mean, it was
Roman,
just a red Camaro, bro. It's all good. It's all good.
yeah, it's last thing on this thing is what's something nice you can say now about Auburn football?
See, now hold on. Now, I think he dislikes him more now than he did as a player.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. Like I respect about you, Roman. You become much more of an outspoken fan, even in the job that we have. Your loyalty and how you speak about Alabama and how seriously you take the games sounds different than when you actually played.
I agree. I think now because I can't control it, PB and CD, like I no longer am making plays. So I am more emotionally involved when it comes to Alabama. And you're right, CD. Like I judge them really hard on like their mistakes, on the things that they're doing. And I am I am a biased fan in a sense when it comes to Alabama. Like I don't even hide that or apologize for that. But I just call a spade a spade. And so I think it's just so much more it's hard to pick on Auburn right now because they're so down and they've been through some tumultuous times as far as the coaching changes. And I went through that,
Yeah.
I went through 3 head coaches in a span of like 3 years. And so where I had Dennis Franchione, he leaves. We get Mike Price for 3 months. He gets fired. Then I got Mike Schuler when we didn't even have spring training. We're just learning the offense right like 2 weeks before the season. So like I went through that. And so I don't put that on anybody else. And right now, that's what Auburn's going through. It's really hard to have some kind of stability when you don't even know if anybody wants to coach your team. Like that was a very lonely feeling. And shout out to Ben Pollard, my strength coach at the time, who really kind of held that team together for us. Because without a strength coach, we had no coach. And not
Wow.
everybody loved or thought Alabama was a job that it is today. It got built back up to that with the perfect combination of Nick Saban, with all the facilities and resources and tradition that Alabama has. But I was there when it wasn't like that. You were still trying to get back to a winning formula or winning tradition. So I don't like picking on Auburn when it comes to that, but I can say a lot of good things. I think Sky Bar, super fun.
True.
All right. Sky Bar, super fun. Been there, shut the place down, PB.
Yeah.
Shut it
Oh,
down.
yeah.
All right. Cut up
Yeah.
on the dance floor. Done all of that. All right. Tumor's Corner, overrated. It's overrated. All right. It's just toilet paper and a tree. Kind of overrated. I mean, I guess you got to have what you have when you win the big games, but I just think it's kind of overrated. And one thing that I love about Alabama is that we will never storm the field. And Auburn is always storming the field for some reason or not.
There it is, CD. I mean, just one of the reasons why Roman Harper always cuts through in what we do, man. It's one of the best rivalries in all of college football. It's a unique perspective of their Iron Bowl. Thanks, buddy. All right, CD, we heard from two Bama guys, two Auburn guys. Which one do you think it means a little bit more to? Could you tell?
Honestly, I hate to say it, but maybe this is just in our recency bias, but it feels like Auburn has that little brother syndrome a little bit, right? That Alabama may have that superiority right now. And I don't know, man. Auburn feels like they're chasing a little bit.
Yeah, but at the same point, too, what it means to the Auburn people as well is incredible. And I think that speaks a little bit to this rivalry, is that it can mean something different to every single person, either how you grew up or even after your playing days, like Roman Harper has said, where it's like then it finally hits him. So I think that's the greatest part about it, man. It's a 365-day. And remember, Houston Nutt talked about this on the Egg Bowl. It's a grocery store game. No matter who wins it, when you go to the grocery store, someone has an opinion about it, and that's what makes it great. Hey, we appreciate you guys checking out this podcast, Regions Extra, SEC Stories. We go behind the scenes to give you a little bit of extra of what's the greatest things that we've seen in this sport. In the Egg Bowl, the Iron Bowl, Florida, Georgia, all of those rivalries are at the top of it, and we thank you for watching.